Hello and welcome to Overtime. I'm your host, Jordan Hiles, and today we are welcoming Elijah Washington for his Overtime debut and Overtime veterans Gage Wellman and Maddox Miller. And we are getting ready to talk about all things sports. And boys, are you ready to get into it?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, of course.
All right, we're going to take things to the basketball court, starting off with Kent State's men's basketball team. They just beat Niagara, which I just realized was in New York and not Canada. They beat them, 76-73. That's a tight game.
Yeah, so from what I was hearing, I could not make it the trip, but from what I'm hearing, the Flashes kind of slacked off towards the end of it. They opened up with a big lead, from what I'm hearing, and then slowly Niagara crept back in. It kind of felt like the Flashes sort of had an undisciplined approach to the game.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like you said, Kent had led by as much as 19 points in the first half, but then over the course of the game, they did get sloppy. They had 13 turnovers on the day. Now, Niagara had 12, but the difference was Niagara had 22 points off turnovers. And, you know, if they got into transition, getting into transition, you get easy baskets. And when you get easy baskets, that's going to keep trimming the lead down and down and down. And eventually they had three-point shooting that cut the lead down to one. But Kent State was resilient. Kent State showed, their veterans showed poise with Jalen Sullinger and Morgan Safford. They both hit like timely free throws and put them up three. And then I think, in my opinion, the thing that they did the best was they dominated the glass. And that was the difference maker. Like, they ended up winning the rebound battle 37-23. And that's huge, especially when, if you look at the rest of the categories, it was pretty much even. So there was like, they were physically imposing on the boards. And it wasn't just one person. It was a group collective effort. Like Safford, he's a guard. He had 7 rebounds. You look at Hornbeak, he had 6 rebounds, and then Gillespie had 6 rebounds as well. Those are 3 different positions where you don't think guards are supposed to rebound the ball, but they're getting down into the paint, getting dirty, doing all the dirty work, and then everybody else was coming together. Now, I do want to point out one specific person, and that's Marquise Barnett. The box score didn't show, like he didn't score a lot of points and everything, but he had so much energy. He was a high energy guy. Like, when I looked at the box score, he had 3 stocks. So he had 2 steals, he had 1 block, and then he had 4 offensive rebounds as a guard. So that creates so much more possessions, that creates so much more opportunity, where ultimately that's how they won the game, in my opinion.
No, and I think that's really big, especially in college, where the three-point shooting isn't as elite, the long-range shooting isn't as elite, where you need as many opportunities as you can, regardless of the talent you're playing. I do think it's a little bit too close of a win than the team should feel comfortable with. But a win's a win. 3-1 record is a pretty good record. But I do think something that does need to improve is kind of the shooting, especially because our leading scorers, Von Cameron Davis and Safford, that you mentioned earlier, they had 17 and 15 points respectively. They shot combined 8 for 24 from the field. That means majority of their points are coming from the free throw line, and you can't rely on just getting to the line every time, because what happens if the refs are a little stingy on the calls? What happens if the team isn't playing as physical and they're not fouling as much? The shooting could be a little bit better, but when you're able to grab the rebounds, you have those opportunities to get back, those second chance points, and getting rebounds from guards is huge. Like, I think Davis only had 3, and he's a forward. So getting the guys who you don't expect to crash the boards, crashing the boards, I think is a recipe for success for this Kent State team.
And I think if that can be your identity as a basketball team, especially in the Mid-American Conference, it's so tough, has a lot of teams that don't recruit, what Duke is bringing in, what Kentucky's bringing in. But if you have some guys like Davis who can pull down 3 boards as a smaller player, or Hornbeak pulling down, usually pulls down averages, 7 to 8 boards a game. Yeah. If you have a couple of guys, if that can be the mantra of your team, toughness, pulling down boards, fighting, fouling guys, making them earn it, and then honestly, do you want, as Maddox said, do you want a close game with Niagara? I don't know what division they're in. I don't know if they're what conference. But at the end of the day, good teams win close games, and bad teams lose close games.
Yes.
So I'm sort of encouraged by this. I would like to see that Kent State identity come in as toughness.
And I know the season is just getting started, but looking ahead into the Mid-American Conference Championship, we have Ohio's ranked first, then Akron, and then us, Kent State. We're ranked 3rd. How do you guys think we're going to do this season, and then hopefully potentially win a MAC ring?
I genuinely think that Kent has a really great shot at winning the MAC conference. Just so they just have to keep their fundamentals. I would say like what they did yesterday. They had, like I said, they kept the intensity high. They kept the energy high. Like you said, shot making is very important. But I feel like in a basketball game, if you're high energy, if you have high energy all the time, it's going to speed other teams up. You're going to be able to get out in transition. You get easier shots, and you just play overall. It's overall team effort. It's chemistry. Like when you improve upon that chemistry, in my opinion, then you just get the ball rolling. And I feel like this was, even though it's earlier on in the season, it's a definitive win because they faced a lot of adversity, but they were still able to overcome it just from their veteran leadership and as a group collective. So.
And this is a program that is a boneheaded mistake away in last year's MAC championship game from being back-to-back MAC champions. This is not some chump program. No. This is a program that has coaching experience, that has seniors. Von Cameron Davis is a senior. There's a lot of continuity in this team that I would not be surprised if they win the MAC this year.
No, not at all.
And that's really how a lot of this stuff works. Like when it comes to like the NCAA tournament, when it comes to the MAC championship, a lot of these teams that have those veteran leaderships, those juniors and seniors, those people that come back, they usually have success. Like compared to like say even if you're looking at like a Kentucky that brings in a great freshman class, or Duke, whatever those high major teams, they struggle in the tournament because they don't have continuity. Like at the end of the day, when you have to when you get dragged through the mud, how are you gonna sustain if you don't have chemistry and pull your stuff together?
Yeah, very true. Well, speaking about the MAC championship in basketball, which that's further down the road, the volleyball MAC championship is happening right now. And right now, today, Buffalo and Western Michigan, and it's Toledo versus Ball State. Those are going to be some really tough matchups. And then
Toledo made it to that far?
Yeah, they did.
Wow.
Because I think Ohio lost out, so they were able to get bumped in. It was like a super weird bracket. Eastern had to win. They ended up losing, and then Ohio had to lose.
So what we talked about yesterday between us and Maddox, Toledo really did pull through. I did not expect that. I'll give them the credit. I thought they kind of had a trap game scenario, but they ended up taking, I think, 4 out of 8 total sets against us. 4 out of 7 total sets against us last weekend. So you got to give credit where credit's due to Toledo. Against, who are they up against? Buffalo?
Yeah, or Toledo's against Ball State, which is
okay. Well then
that's a good matchup.
That's a good matchup.
Ball State was like at the bottom of the rankings in the beginning of the season, and then they just jumped.
Yeah, not to get ahead of myself, and not again to put down Toledo. I'm not putting down Toledo, but I do ultimately think the winner of Western versus Buffalo is the winner of the MAC this year. I think those are the two teams that have sort of risen to the cream of the crop of the MAC. I don't think Toledo would beat either of them, but we've seen crazy stuff, happen. This has been a very wild MAC volleyball year.
No, it has. I think it's crazy. But getting back to Kent State, they've had a pretty downward of a season. They were last in the MAC as a whole, and they've only won 2 games this season, and one being Akron, which was a great game.
Yeah,
you
like to see that.
Kick them out of the MAC?
Yeah, they kicked them out of the MAC, which is always great when it's against
they're still in the conference, but the championship.
Well, you know what I meant. Into the MAC championship.
Would have been funny if we kicked them out on all sports. Can't play football in the MAC, can't play soccer in the MAC.
No, but being frank, 2 wins is not great. It's a little hard to be like, okay, we only won 2 games. What are positives we can take away from this season? The positives I would say is the team isn't old by any means. I looked, there's 6 freshmen on the team, only 5 graduating students. So you really have to hope the transfer portal's kind to them and a bunch of people don't just bail out. But if they can we just talked about it with basketball, like the idea of continuity and having veterans on your team. If you can keep these freshmen, these sophomores, and you can elevate the juniors to seniors, it's optimistic for the future. It may not be optimistic for how the season ended right now. You can't look back and be, wow, what were our marquee wins and what can we build on? But you can say, okay, we have players here who will be here for 2 more years, 4 more years or whatever, and you're going to keep bringing in new recruits. So that is my big, here's how you stay optimistic if you're Kent State volleyball.
That is going to be the headline for Coach Haley Eckerman. How do I keep Mackenzie McGuire
Mackenzie
and
McGuire.
Kendall White from
They-
leaving.
Yeah.
She's going to have to convince White. She's going to have to convince McGuire. Listen, guys, I know the season that we had was not the season we wanted. We went 2-22. We had one conference win. I need you too. She needs to have White, Bolanini as a libero, and then McGuire as your main kill getter. It's their prong head
Yes.
foundation for this team moving forward. As for the transfer portal, well, she was successful in bringing in transfers. Bolanini herself was a transfer.
Yeah.
I believe McGuire was a transfer.
She was.
So Coach Eckerman has a history of she's not afraid of the portal. She's not a Coach Sweeney from
I was gonna
Clemson.
say.
She's not afraid of the portal, so she'll go into it. But she really is going to have to dig deep and work hard at keeping those two star players.
So, as bad of a season that we had this season, what are expectations going into next year? I know, like, it's probably small because you
Yeah.
know we're on a downswing right now.
I think
But-
a lot of the players are young. They've had Nadia Miller. She was one of their starting middles, young. And then Leslie Ferruta, her and Bolanini shared the libero position. They all had one season. They didn't have a spring. Spring is time, like the time for you to get better, off season. And Coach Haley Eckerman hasn't had a chance for them to like really practice. So I think just getting the younger girls. How many freshmen did you say there were?
I said
Six.
Yeah.
That's a lot. That's a good
That
freshman
is.
class.
Yeah,
And-
for a volleyball team.
and for them to be starting, usually freshmen sit the bench their first year, and if she's having freshmen start, they haven't really had that time to train. I think once they can get training in, if she can keep McGuire and White to
Yeah.
stay,
Yeah. Those are your foundational pieces.
they
for
need
sure.
to lay down the foundation. They just had signing day. What was it? A couple days ago, or
Yep.
maybe last week. They're bringing in some good girls. I looked at who they had. No 5-star recruiters coming to Kent to play volleyball.
Do you remember the highest star, maybe? If it's not okay.
I can't remember.
Yeah,
just
but
girls that could have been a little bit higher, maybe chose to go to Kent State money-wise.
That's good.
Yeah. And with roster cuts, who knows? Maybe McGuire and White, they had that full ride scholarship, which could get them to stay. Because I know money is a good.
And again, they're coming to play for a program which, although has dwindled, it does have a volleyball legend in Haley Eckerman coaching. She did a phenomenal job at Texas, and now, just like we said with basketball, create continuity, stay
Yeah.
there, keep your players.
And who wouldn't want to play for a coach who's been to the Final Four 4 times?
Yeah.
And I think she was like an All-American as well. But unlike Kent State football, there's a bunch of action in college football tomorrow, but we'll get into that after this. Welcome back to Overtime. Like I said before, we're getting into some pretty good matchups in college football. I wouldn't call it a great matchup, but Ohio State versus Indiana. Indiana is undefeated right now. And Ohio State, I don't know if they deserve that number 5 spot. We'll get into that. But it should be a good matchup for them. What do you think?
I think Indiana is completely over their head. I have no idea what that coach of theirs thinks that he's doing when he's going out there talking about Google Meet, talking about, oh, we're pretty good. Well, great, buddy. You beat 5-5 Michigan, who has no quarterback. I think my grandma's taking snaps under center up in Ann Arbor. I don't believe in Indiana. I haven't believed in Indiana all season. I don't think they deserve a spot in the college football playoffs if some SEC teams start to look sharper. I think Ohio State takes this one easily.
I think this is literally, like you said, Indiana really hasn't played anyone. This is their one chance to make a statement.
Yeah.
It's this or it's nothing. And a lot of people are saying, oh, Indiana, they go from like a 95% if they win, and they only drop to like a 93% if they lose. I think that is completely wrong. I think if Indiana goes out there and just gets decimated by Ohio State,
The committee would hound on that. And be
yeah,
like,
there's no reason for us to be like, Indiana deserves to be one of the 12 teams to get into the playoff, especially because it is, I think, a case of a perfect storm. Indiana is the beneficiary of a very messy SEC where, one team rises to the top, they lose to another team, but then that team loses to another team. They've all just kind of like taken bites out of each other. Yeah, they've kind of just taken bites out of each other. And that's resulted in a bunch of 2-loss SEC teams. And then they're just looking at it and they're like, undefeated is undefeated. It is a little odd how Indiana is all the way up here as they're undefeated, but a program like Army is only in the teens as an undefeated team. It feels like we're getting a little too Hoosier excited, and this if they go out and lose by 30 plus points or something, I see no reason for us to or for the committee to say, yeah, they're still one of the 12 best teams, but that's just my opinion.
Okay, so here's what I think. I'm going to give Indiana credit because you beat who's in front of you.
Yeah.
Now, granted, do I think they deserve the 5 spot? Absolutely not. Just because their strength of schedule, like you guys were saying. Like, they have not had a promising and notable win, in my opinion. But I really think that Ohio State, if they can hold Indiana to a slow starting first half, then obviously they're going to cakewalk them. But Ohio State they have times where they get off to slow starts, whether that be defensively or offensively. But in my opinion, they're starting to round into form. Ohio State they're rounding into who we expected them to be. So I think that if my magic number for Ohio State is keeping Indiana under 24 points. I feel like if they keep them under 24 points and not get into a shootout, because Indiana have a great offense. They do.
Yeah.
You can't deny that. So you don't want to get into a shootout with them. But I trust Ohio State. They're more than capable of, limiting Indiana to a lower amount, to 24.
Two things. I'm really inspired. I really like what I've been seeing by Ohio State's defensive front, especially Curry as of late. However, Denzel Burke needs to be playing better in this Indiana run and shoot type of offense. I don't think they run and shoot, but air raid-ish. Second, the playoff committee has historically not really cared about if you're undefeated and you've played who and who. Florida State last year, UCF like every other year in the late 2010s. There are teams where if you go undefeated or you're one game where you're supposed to win it, you lose, then I'm sorry, but I think Georgia beats Indiana. I think Tennessee beats Indiana. I think Alabama beats Indiana. I think Mississippi beats Indiana.
There's at least, in my opinion, 10 SEC teams that beat Indiana. Maybe 7 to 10.
I think Indiana would beat LSU.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
I think Indiana would beat Oklahoma.
Right.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah.
Oh, and Texas. They wouldn't beat Texas. They wouldn't beat Texas.
No. Or Ole Miss.
Or Ole Miss.
But it wouldn't be the same cakewalk that they had,
No.
Yeah.
at all.
Do you guys want to give out some individual awards?
Absolutely.
Okay, so best player.
Our Heisman?
Who's our Heisman contender? Who's taking it this year?
Everybody loves themselves some Travis Hunter, and I don't know if he'll translate well into the pro game, but we're not asking that question, so I will give it to Travis Hunter. He's playing on both sides of the ball. Is that team loudmouth? Is that team brash? Yeah, but at the end of the day, he's playing incredibly well on two sides of the ball. He looks great. I'll go to Travis
For
Hunter.
a ranked Colorado team as well. A team that may compete for the Big 12.
And may get a spot in the playoff.
Exactly. So I think that helps his case out a lot. I'm going with the guy that has kind of just like taken college football by storm, whether it's how many carries he's getting per game, whether it's how he stands before he gets the ball. I'm giving it to Ashton Genty. 1,893 yards,
Ridiculous.
Wow.
27 total touchdowns. He's averaging 7.4 a carry. It's unreal what he's doing at the running back position. And people are saying, oh, he's getting 30 plus carries a game. Oh, he's getting 25 plus carries a game. Yeah, because he is Boise State.
Yeah.
Boise State they're not in the top 25. They're not where they are now if it isn't for him. And the other thing is, as a defense, they know what's coming. They're giving the ball to him up the middle, stretching him outside. They're stacking the box against him, and it just doesn't matter. He's still averaging 5.7 yards a carry per game or something like that, rushing for over 100 yards, scoring multiple touchdowns. He's also sat multiple games because they've blown him out. So I think he is my Heisman winner right now.
That's a guy who'll translate well to the NFL.
So
Future Cowboy.
So Travis Hunter, in my opinion, is the best player. I think he deserves the Heisman. But looking besides him, I am a huge Cam Ward fan. I am a Cam Ward fanatic. I want to see him in Cleveland.
Good fit.
Like he's just so poised. You never get him rattled. And every single game that they get in is a shootout. Like their offense is so high potent. He's the general. So I think that if they had a more competent defense, they would get the nod.
They wouldn't have lost to Georgia Tech.
Yeah, they wouldn't have lost to Georgia Tech. I don't blame that on Cam Ward. Like, obviously, you try to make as many plays as possible, but when you're close to playing, like, as great as you can, which he plays great every game,
Yeah.
then it's like you can't. It's nothing you can do about that. But I think that Cam Ward, in my opinion, is the best player, and I can't wait to see him for the rest of the season, and then see him in the NFL.
Yeah, I was gonna have to agree with Gage, Travis Hunter as well, playing cornerback and wide receiver. Just both sides of the ball is just unheard of, which to me that is insane and really hard to do. So he has to be my best player. Now, what about disappointing player?
So one guy I really expected to see a big leap from this year. Last year he was solid. He got himself on the cover of NCAA 25.
He did.
But I expected this quarterback to really put himself as the best over Cam Ward, over Shedeur Sanders, but he didn't, and that's Quinn Ewers. Now is Texas 8-1 and ranked at 3? Yes, and he has suffered from injury. But in his play, we haven't, other than that Michigan game, and Michigan is not a premier opponent anymore, at least for this year. He struggled, and it was really unfortunate to see because I thought he was going to cement himself as a Heisman candidate, but he's just not had the skill set. He's not had the sort of continuity, and then he even had Arch Manning come in for a few games, and Texas fans were kind of chanting for him. So I think Ewers' confidence kind of took a shot after the injury, and I think he gets this award, sadly.
I do think it's tough because Cam Ward is in the Heisman conversation, and then you have like Shedeur Sanders as well, where Quinn Ewers is kind of just being overshadowed at the quarterback position. He doesn't play as much flashy ball as those two guys, but he's kind of just doing the put your head down, just win football game strategy right now. I'm going to stick with running backs for my disappointing. Another college football 25 cover athlete. Maybe it's a curse except for Travis.
Right.
It's Donovan Edwards. He had cemented himself as a starting running back after his great national championship performance. He gashed Ohio State multiple times as the backup to Blake Corum. Everyone was like, okay, once Corum leaves, he is the next man up. He's going to be great. He only has 513 rushing yards and 4 total touchdowns all season. He has been practically benched by Khalil Mullings, and Michigan fans are now saying, "Oh, Donovan Edwards is just an opportunity back. We need to let Mullings beat up on the defensive line for Edwards to hit the gap." No, Donovan Edwards is just
He's in the dumps.
As a senior college football running back, he's kind of washed. Yeah. Like I'm serious. He looked so good like 2 years ago when he decimated Ohio State, and everyone was like, "Holy crap, we have our running back. We have lightning and thunder. We have Edwards and Corum. It's going to be great." But I have Edwards as a very disappointing player for a very disappointing team as well.
So for my underwhelming player, I have none other than Georgia's own Carson Beck. I don't even know where to begin with him. Like last year, he looked so good, but now I understand he did have a lot better receivers than he had. Brock Bowers to hide his mistakes. He made it easy, but now it's like, okay, he gets up against these SEC teams. I was watching the game against Florida. It's Florida, for crying out loud. He was struggling against Florida.
Yeah.
Like he was throwing the ball into I seen a play where he threw it into triple coverage. Yeah. And then he got back on the sideline and was laughing.
Yeah.
Like it's like you're not taking this serious. Like literally your draft stock is on the line.
Yeah.
Like you were a highly rated QB in this draft and you're just plummeting your own draft stock by doing that. And I don't understand, like, where did the fall off happen? Like if you were as great as everybody was anointing you to be, I don't get like I don't understand the complacency he had.
I believe he came into the season as Mel Kiper's third quarterback behind Sanders and Ewers, and I think he's played himself into day 3, probably. Day 3, maybe
this
day 2.
This Georgia year is very odd. Like they're still a really good program, but they don't feel like Georgia. Yeah. But you can only go off feeling so much.
Mine's Florida State's quarterback, DJ
Uiagalelei.
Yes. Now, he's only completed 54% of his passes, I saw. And granted, his wide receivers.
34?
54.
Oh, 54.
I was
going to say 30.
Holy.
Has been dropping a lot of them.
He is.
But they were 13-1 last year. They were in the Final Four. They were dropped out.
They were the first out.
First team out because Jordan Travis got hurt.
Yeah, they had a great run last year, and they are 1-8 this year. Now, is it his fault?
1-9.
Not entirely his fault. It's more like a team individual, but Florida State he's just my disappointing player.
Yeah, definitely. Good pick.
Yeah. What about surprising?
Surprising, I will go with Carnell Tate of the Ohio State Buckeyes. I think it's easy to kind of get caught up in the Emeka Ibukas and the Quinshon Judkins of the world. But I think Tate has really pulled through when the Buckeyes have needed him to, especially last week against Northwestern. The offense kind of got off to a slow start. Now they won 38-7, and in a game that wasn't really even a road game. They played in Wrigley Field, where Buckeyes fans were very, very abundant.
Yeah.
But I think Cardell Tate has a very good future ahead of him. I think he's got good character. I think he's got good hands, good footwork. Not the route runner that Jeremiah Smith is, and he is going to be in the NFL, but I think Cardell Tate has really surprised me.
He's only a sophomore, right?
Yeah.
So he's young. He still has
A lot of time.
A lot of time left.
My surprise player coincides with my surprise team from last week, and that is quarterback Bryson Daly of Army.
I like that.
He,
Yeah.
1,062 rushing yards because Army runs that really funky offense. He has 21 rushing touchdowns, and he has 7 passing touchdowns and only 1 interception. So that totals out to 28 total touchdowns with 1,000+ yards of rushing and a couple yards of passing in there. I think he is someone who has really embraced this Army style of football, and he is using it to his full advantage, and he is excelling in it. And I think he is such a big reason of why Army is doing so good right now. Now, they have a massive game against Notre Dame this weekend where this will be most likely their, I don't want to say it's their season on the line for college football playoffs, but because they've already clinched a conference championship appearance, and that will help if they can win that. But if Daly can lead this Army team over the Fighting Irish, they will be in the college football playoffs, barring a disaster.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so for me, I'm not going to focus as much on a player, but I want to focus on a team. Now, this sounds kind of crazy because, they're a very flamboyant team. Everybody knows that they're out there. I'm surprised with Colorado. I didn't expect Colorado to be as good as they are. I didn't expect them to be ranked. I didn't expect them to potentially be in a spot to be in the college football playoff. Now, because after last season, they started off solid last season, but it just felt like everything just went down on a downward spiral, rather. And then you had players leaving the program. You had former players bad-mouthing the program. It just felt like it was a lot of, drama surrounding them. And there is drama surrounding them. It's a Deion Sanders-led team.
Yeah.
But they've been able to compartmentalize that drama, and they've been able to take it in and actually use it and succeed off of it. So I feel like they have some good wins so far within the Big 12, and I feel like they really have a good shot. Even when they get into the playoffs, I think their offense is good enough to potentially maybe not beat a team within the playoff, but have a really good chance.
I agree with him. As much as I don't really like Deion Jr. trying to fight Texas Tech ball boys with his camera in his hand, they have settled through the noise, and they are poised at this point to try and take on BYU in the championship game. That we'll see what happens there for sure. We don't know what will happen in that game.
Yeah. Well, mine goes along with my surprise team from last week. It was Indiana, so I'm going to have to go with their quarterback, Curtis. What was his last name?
Rourke.
Yeah. Wacky last name. But he has 1,752 yards, and he has 16 touchdowns. I think he's part of the reason why Indiana is doing so well. I mean, he probably is the reason. But, I mean, his test is, like we said, going to be against Ohio State. Is he going to be able to get past their defense? Not sure, but he's surprised me so far this season.
He fits well within their system. If I am not mistaken, did he come over from James Madison with the coach?
I do not know.
All right.
But regardless, he is going to have to be perfect against Ohio State if the Hoosiers want any chance of beating the Buckeyes.
If the Buckeyes play defense, he'll have to be perfect.
Yeah, just attack Burke the entire time. That's what they'll do.
Okay, well, you guys heard our awards for college football. Now let's transition into Sunday football. Well, last night, let's talk about Thursday night football, Steelers-Browns.
Yep.
What a wild, once-in-a-lifetime game for football players. Who gets to play in a winter wonderland like that? That was insane. The beginning of the game was, no snow on the ground, and by the fourth quarter, it was covered.
It was an absolute snow globe, and I'm pretty happy for Jameis Winston. And I think, after he had left Tampa in 2019, after he has that infamous 30-30 season, everyone's like, all right, that's it. He'll go off quietly, he'll die, maybe he'll go to the Jets or something and play backup quarterback for a few games. But eventually he's done something with himself. He's gone into the tank, he's got that eye surgery, which probably really helped.
Yeah.
And he looked solid last night. I think he would have looked better if it wasn't, especially I think he would have looked better in the second half if it wasn't so snowy. I think that interception he threw towards the end of the fourth quarter really gave me a heart attack.
I was just going to say,
Because I was like, oh no, you just squandered everything you've just worked for the last 3 quarters. But eventually, he did pull through. He on that 3rd and 4th, where we'll talk about the decision Mike Tomlin makes, but he does a naked bootleg, fires right to Judy and the snow is really coming down hard, and that ends up setting up a touchdown.
And that's the thing too. Like, I was texting my mom back and forth. She's not a big football fan, but it's a Browns Steelers game, so everybody's going to tune in. And I had told her, I'm like, okay, he had the fumble. He had the fumble, and then I'm like, okay, this is such a Jameis Winston game.
Yeah.
And he had the interception. I'm like, oh, this is really a Jameis Winston game. But then I'm like, okay, there's 5 minutes left on the clock, and he's going to get the ball back. There's no way he can mess up a 3rd time.
Right.
And he didn't. Like, I am such a big – I applaud Jameis Winston for what he did. I applaud him for what he does, like his pregame, postgame, mid-game interviews. It's so inspirational.
I loved his interviews that they had him do last night. They were really nice.
It's so beautiful just hearing him talk. Like, after his post-NFL career, he's going to be a great motivational speaker or a great pastor somewhere because he is so amazing. But going back to the game, it felt like such a good old typical AFC North battle game, or AFC North battle, like low scoring. Defenses were pretty good. I would say second half more so, but obviously, you did have the snow effect and everything. But overall, it was like, from a spectator point of view, it was a really good game, very entertaining game.
No, I mean, Pittsburgh got trap gamed. Like, they walked into a divisional opponent's home field. Sure, the elements were the elements, but that goes both ways for both teams.
It's not like Pittsburgh's from Miami.
I was going to say, I literally was just about to say those exact same words. You are a Midwestern team. You know what cold football's like. You've done it time and time again. Yeah, sure, snow like this is rare. Lions, Eagles, and the Freeze Bowl, Chiefs, Dolphins playoff game. But that wasn't even snow. That was just cold. The Steelers, I think, had a lot of confidence heading into this game. They just got done beating Baltimore, who was kind of seen as, like, even though Pittsburgh has had their number, Baltimore was seen as the hurdle where it was, okay, if we can beat Baltimore, we are a legitimate AFC North and AFC contending football team. But then you go into a primetime game and you kind of just dud against Cleveland. Obviously, it's not like they got blown out. They played a close game. It's the same thing that Cleveland did to Baltimore, where they just kind of shut down the offense. I also think the one thing the snow affected them maybe the most, or just the wind in general, was that it affected Chris Boswell's kicking. He's their MVP on the offensive side, even though he's a kicker, because he scores so many points for them. And when he missed that 50-plus yard field goal at the beginning of the game, it's like, oh no.
And then you can't attempt any kicks after that.
Yeah, because it's a blizzard.
And then we got to talk about the 15-yard punt, the shank punt. Like, literally, that put the Browns right there in field. Like, it put them in position. It put them in position right there. So.
One thing that, and this was a whole sequence of events that actually had me shaking my head. I don't remember I think it was illegal formation, and it's a 3rd down, and Mike Tomlin can either accept and make it 3rd and 7, or decline and make it 4th and 2. And at first he goes accept, but then decline, but then accept, or decline, then accept, then decline again. And the whole time I'm just like, why would you give? Granted, I get it. The Browns are 2-8.
Yeah. They've
had a terrible season. Maybe you can stop Nick Chubb on an inside zone. Maybe you can stop a fullback here and there. But again, you're giving Jameis Winston with a good arm an extra down. Why would you do that? Like, why? What makes you think? And again, it's not like it's a holding call and you're making it 3rd and 17. 3rd and 7, and you have to go for it on 4th down, so it's 4-down territory, is not the end of the world for Cleveland.
No.
And then and not only that, they didn't need to get 7 yards; they get 10, I think, on the throw to Judy, and then that sets it up for Chubb.
Yeah.
Why would you make that decision if you're Tomlin? Yeah. And it's just, again, like, is this loss a crazy knock on Pittsburgh? No, they're going to make the playoffs. But it's just little crap like this that makes you think, oh, Pittsburgh can't win the Super Bowl. because of this.
Yeah, I think between that and between Pittsburgh's air of confidence heading to this game, especially George Pickens, like,
Yep.
dude, you gotta just
Calm.
you gotta
Yeah, he
cool
needs
it,
to-
man.
yeah.
Because then he's going in the post-game interview and he's like, "No, the Browns suck." It's like, well, you lost to the
And
Browns.
this is
So
the
how
thing,
does?
and he's making excuses. He's like, oh, if the conditions were different.
That's what
I'm
I
like,
just saw,
I'm like,
like,
what are
you're
you
from
talking about? You
Yeah.
play in Pittsburgh. You're going to have to deal with this
And
at
it's-
some point.
And
Wasn't
There's
it just wasn't that game against Washington bad weather?
It's
was
the other
cold
thing
as-
is
yeah.
Yeah,
it's
it
not
was
like
cold.
the Steelers don't have a running game. They have Warren and Najee Harris. They have the ability to just
Where
put
even
the
was Najee
to
Harris
just
last
put the
night?
ball
He was-
on the ground.
Even like TJ Watt, he kind of just like faded away.
Oh, TJ Watt disappeared.
And this is what I loved. I'm sorry.
Go.
This is what I loved about the end of the game too. After the game, they interviewed Myles Garrett, and Myles Garrett, he stood 10 toes down. He said, "I am the best defensive player in the league. I'm better than TJ Watt," and he showed it right there. Like, obviously, it's a one-game sample size, but he gave reasoning behind that. He literally said, like, you seen it. Like, TJ Watt, he didn't get game planned as much than Myles Garrett did.
Yeah.
And even then, like, he said that even when you get game planned, there's other ways you figure it out. There's other
Yeah.
ways to figure it out, and Myles Garrett figured it out last night.
Because the Browns haven't had to. I mean, this is 2 times in back-to-back years where TJ Watt goes against a depleted Browns offensive line, against a backup quarterback. It happened last year against Dorian Thompson-Robinson, and he went against DeJuan Jones, and he does nothing. TJ Watt puts up a nothing burger of a stat line. This year, Jameis Winston is the backup quarterback against a struggling Browns team. That Browns team last year was good.
Yeah.
This year, I don't even know who his matchup was. It was probably shuffled between Ifedi and Conklin and just anyone on the line. And again, you don't do anything. I don't know his pressures. I don't know his hits. But I don't remember hearing his name during the broadcast at all, or seeing a stat. And then we can't call you the best if year in a row you get shut out.
And then there were even pivotal points in the game where I'm like, okay, I feel like TJ Watt's going to get
Yeah.
involved at some point. Like, especially in that fourth quarter. You know he's good for it, having a game-sealing strip sack.
You're waiting for it.
Yeah, like, and he lined up even more, like, on the outside of the tackle, and I'm like, okay, he's just going to zoom
Yeah.
right on by. He didn't.
No.
Chubb chipped him just a little bit, and that little chip, it made a huge difference. And they ended up getting the first down, and they ended up, scoring. So.
Well, I hope the Steelers can bounce back from that. Because I am a Steelers fan, but I will have to say it was a great game, and the Browns played pretty well. And I think I'm a Jameis Winston's fan now.
It's hard. It's hard. It's really hard not to be.
Yeah,
He's-
he is a very nice guy. I didn't know too
Yeah,
much
he's
about
just
him.
so
he's
nice.
a nice guy.
And he is so funny.
Yeah.
sorry.
That's
He's
what-
very
He's a
charismatic.
very good,
As we're
funny
getting
guy.
into Jason Kelsey, he's hosting a late night show on ESPN. It's starting January 3rd, and our other question was who would we like to see on that show, and my pick was Jameis Winston.
That's a perfect pick.
That was also my pick.
My
It was.
question is, who asked for this? But let me put my hater goggles off. I think we already have the answer to this question. We already have a great late night sports show. It's between Chad Johnson and Shannon Sharp. I actually watch that because I actually want to hear what those two guys have to say, and it's hilarious.
And the occasional
And-
Deion
Yeah.
Sanders appearance.
Right, and since it's on YouTube, you don't have the censorship, and obviously we're censored here, but sometimes when you want to be at home, you want to hear what you want to hear.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think Chad Johnson and Shannon Sharp already have the best show.
The best. Well, yeah, because it's not late night, but like the Pat McAfee show, he's also just very charismatic.
But sometimes you don't want to sit around listening to Barstool Sports employees
Okay,
for
that's-
3.5 hours.
I can
talk
get
about
behind
their
that.
opinions.
I can
You
get
know,
behind that.
I could just go down to Frat Row on Main Street here,
Yeah.
knock on everybody's door,
Yeah.
and ask them what they think about the Browns game, and I would do. That's the Pat McAfee show.
Yeah, that's true.
Not
Yeah.
Deion Sanders, Chad Johnson and Shannon Sharp, they played in the league. They have
Yeah.
little stories, Sometimes one of them goes on Instagram Live and, tells stories of the old days. So,
Jason Kelsey he's funny.
No,
He's hilarious.
yeah, he's funny.
Oh yeah, Kelsey's.
Like, he's a great
Yeah.
person to have this show.
No, he's. I mean, he already has his podcast with
Yeah,
his
with
brother.
Trev,
He's a great choice for this. I'm glad he is doing all these things in retirement because for a guy that, really laid it out on the line for a long time in the league and was kind of like for the Eagles specifically and just for kind of the league in general, like not the first, but one of the few O linemen that, you'd maybe go to an Eagles game and you're like, oh, they're wearing a center's jersey, not the quarterback, not the receiver, not the running back, not a DB. They're wearing the center's jersey. That's odd. So I think it's really good for him to broaden his spectrum like that.
And let me say, I wasn't trying to slander the Kelsey bros or
No.
anything. I like them. They're from Cleveland Heights. They're from 10 minutes from my house. But you also sometimes you see a celebrity so much and you're like, all right, well, let me go find something else.
Oh, because he's
Very-
doing all those commercials as well.
Commercials
Yeah.
and social media, and you gotta hear a podcast.
The
And
Monday
then you
Night
gotta
Football.
Hear Taylor Swift.
And you gotta hear the
and
Taylor
all
Swift song, and my girlfriend plays Taylor Swift at the dorm, and then we're hearing this all, and it's like a cycle. It's like the SEC. It's like my life is the SEC.
Yeah, life is your SEC, just constantly
Right.
a circle.
Yeah, pretty much. But it's the Kelsey fam and Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that.
Nothing
I'm not
wrong
a
with
hater.
that.
Yeah.
Another pick I had for another athlete would be Christian Wilkins from the Dolphins.
Oh, that's a good one.
that
I
is
didn't
a
think
good-
of that.
okay,
His
yeah.
mic'd up videos have me in tears all of the time.
He's hilarious.
Hilarious. He's truly a comedian. Yes.
No, he's for a defensive lineman. Like if we got they were in the AFC East, but now Wilkins is in Vegas. If we got a Christian Wilkins, Quinnen Williams show, that would be just two defensive tackles just chopping it up the entire time. Did they both? Quinnen Williams was.
Quinn Williams was Bama.
Wilkins was a Power Ranger at Clemson.
Yeah.
I knew that.
And shipping it off the gridiron to basketball, I think Meta World Peace and Steven Jackson would make a great duo, just talking about all the guys they wanted to kick their ass, kick their behinds
He didn't
on
say it.
the
He
basketball court. I think they could have like maybe Ben Wallace would want to come on the show, maybe just players from the 2000s. I think that would be a great show.
Just the mid-2000s show.
Special guest appearance by Bill Lambier.
Oh yeah, that'd be
yeah.
fun.
Bad Boy Pistons
Oh, yeah.
appearances.
You could just have tough players on the show all the time.
All right. Well, are you guys ready to get into start, bench, cut?
I sure am.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna get into that after this. Welcome back, and it's time for everyone's favorite segment called Start, Bench, Cut. Alex, put it up there. All right. NFL running backs.
Okay.
Jamar Gibbs.
Oh,
right.
I know who I'm taking.
I was about to say, let's let the Detroit man
Yeah.
kick this one off.
Well, just look at it.
Yeah.
130. He has almost 20 less carries, and he has about almost 60 less carries compared to Dobbins and Kyron Williams, and he has more yards and the same amount of touchdowns. Is this? Here's my question, and maybe Alex can answer. Is this just rushing yards and rushing
Yes.
touchdowns?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
The other thing, Jahmyr Gibbs, really good receiving back. He broke out like a 50-plus yard reception against the Jaguars, even though I think anyone could do that. No, bias. It's literally on my chest. But I mean, just looking at the numbers, 133, 796, 8 touchdowns. That is, compared to those two guys. No disrespect to J.K. Dobbins, gonna win comeback player of the year at this rate, but it's Gibbs for me.
I'm also going to start Gibbs. I think he's the youngest out of those two.
Yeah, I'm
He
benching
hasn't
Dobbins.
suffered any injuries. I love J.K. Dobbins. He was one of my favorite players growing up as a kid, watching the Bucks. But I'm going to have to cut him because unfortunately he's had lots of injuries. And if I were to start a franchise, I wouldn't really want him to do the history, and I'll bench Kyron Williams. Kyron Williams is good, but he's not Gibbs' tier yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, mine have to be Gibbs. Honestly, just straight down the line: Gibbs, Dobbins, Williams.
All right.
Yeah, and mine will be, Gibbs will start. Like you said, he's a multi-dimensional running back. And he's also doing this in a two-back system.
Yes.
That's a good
another
point,
key
too.
point. Like David Montgomery's, what do they call themselves? Sonic and
Knuckles.
That tandem is such a great tandem, and just
So
for
funny.
Jahmyr Gibbs to still get those stats based off being with splitting the carries, that's great. Then I would say Kyron Williams. I'm benching Kyron Williams just because I'm a huge Kyron Williams fan. I think that he's the focal point of their offense, even though they do have Puka and Cooper Kupp. When they went out, he was still holding down the fort. Now I do love J.K. Dobbins as well, but coming off the injury, he's still like you said, he will win comeback player of the year, but he just doesn't match up to those two.
Yeah,
Nice.
I forgot it's not just pick the one guy. So
Right.
start Gibbs. I'm probably gonna bench Dobbins, and then I'm gonna cut Kyron Williams, even though I do agree Dobbins' injuries are scary. But he is proving that right now he does have the capabilities to stay healthy. And if I remember correctly, maybe I'm making this up, Kyron Williams has also had like some injury.
Yeah,
Has he? Okay.
Yeah,
All
he's,
right.
he's had some injury troubles as well.
Yeah.
So I'm going to
Then
go.
I guess for me, interchangeable.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah.
Like last year he had a really bad injury bug. This year he's been generally healthy.
He's been very solid.
Yeah.
And he's been holding down the fort. So I would go Kyron Williams.
Yeah, well, I enjoyed talking all of our opinions and giving out awards and such, but unfortunately, that is all the time that we had to talk about all things sports. Thank you, Elijah, Gage, and Maddox, for getting into it with me. I've been Jordan Hiles. Have a great day.